My name is Tiffany. Before getting married, I worked full-time. But the truth is, that company had terrible working conditions. I had nearly 90 hours of unpaid overtime. I thought about working even after marriage, but due to health issues, I decided to quit when I got married. Now, I live a healthy lifestyle, waking up and going to bed at regular hours. My health improved drastically after quitting. My husband, Theo, didn't oppose my decision to quit. He seems to love that I'm home, doing household chores and welcoming him back from work. Back when we were newlyweds, he would often say, "I'm so lucky to have a wife who welcomes me home." Though, after 5 years, that sentiment became a given. But that's to be expected. Still, issues crop up over the years. My mother-in-law, Sarah, who used to be sweet, now often asks, "When will you give me a grandchild?" Every time we visit. And she always chooses to say it when Theo isn't around. Years of hearing this has built up a considerable amount of stress for me. To be honest, I don't want to see her because of the pressure she gives. My father-in-law, John, is a quiet, kind man who doesn't interfere. The irony is, it's Theo who says, "Kids are just a hassle. They also cost a lot." Yet when confronted with his parents, he acts as if it's none of his business. Once I told him, "If you don't want kids, explain it to your parents." But he shrugged it off saying, "Isn't that a conversation for women?" At crucial times, he evades responsibility with his own set of values. Because of this, to his mother, I seem the wife who can't have children, and he's the husband supporting her. Finally, I tried to clarify. "It's Theo who doesn't want kids." But Sarah, convinced I can't get pregnant, replied, "You're just trying to put the blame on someone else." John sometimes tells Sarah not to interfere with our choices, but she doesn't listen. In the end, Theo doesn't want the hassle of parenting but doesn't want to upset his mother either. It's evident that he's always trying to please his mom. Honestly, I never thought he'd be this unreliable. If a ship were sinking, he'd probably save his mother before me. "Yes, he's a bit old-fashioned. But at least you're not living with them," my mother casually responds over a weekday afternoon call. Over the past year, I've often vented to my mother about Theo and Sarah. Although my mom is quiet, she's rational. She patiently listens and often calms me down. I feel guilty sometimes, thinking that a wife shouldn't complain about her husband to her parents. But with Theo not being supportive, my mom is the only person who truly understands me. "I'm sorry for always talking about this. I know you have your struggles too." "It's okay. Mom's fine now. The hospital tests showed nothing wrong." In reality, she had heart surgery and got a pacemaker just 3 months ago. I was worried when I heard she was going in for the procedure, but she just laughed it off. "Reminds me of when I told my husband," he said. "Pacemakers are pretty common these days. It's not that big of a deal." Yet, when his own mother sprained her ankle, he panicked and promised I'd help out without asking me first. Talk about double standards. I mean, a surgical cut is way more serious than putting a plaster on an ankle. I always complain over the phone and rarely visit my family since I live far away. I haven't been the best daughter to my parents, but this time I plan to surprise my mom on her birthday with a trip, in collaboration with my dad. I'm home. Dinner's ready. My husband, as always, takes a seat at the dinner table. He never really comments on the food anymore, but I was excited about the plan I made with my father. "Actually, my mom's birthday is coming up." "Oh." He paused eating his steak and looked at me quizzically. "I was thinking of booking a hotel in Lake Tahoe and taking a trip there." "Really?" He didn't seem too keen. "The hotel is quite fancy, and it's popular around here. I got a great deal through a contact. Upon hearing the word luxury, his eyes lit up. A luxury hotel? We're getting separate rooms from your parents, right? Yes, we are. And since both my parents will be there, why don't we do some sightseeing in Lake Tahoe together? Sure. At least he seemed somewhat interested. Considering he spends most of his time with his parents, he can't complain about a trip with mine once in a while. Luckily this time, I don't need to arrange the dates or the hotel booking. My parents are taking care of everything. It's like I'm letting them do everything for me. This might seem more like me being spoiled rather than being kind to them. When's the trip? I need to apply for my leaves. My husband threw the question over his shoulder as I was packing in the bedroom. Didn't I tell you? It's on the 23rd and 24th. Oh, right. Turning around, I saw him absent-mindedly fiddling with his phone. I've told him about this trip before. He never really pays much attention to me or my family. But on reflection, indifference was better than his past reactions. On the day of the trip, we drove to the luxury hotel in Lake Tahoe. My parents had arrived the previous night. Today's plan was to explore Lake Tahoe with them and enjoy dinner at the hotel. It's been a while since I last saw them, maybe since my mother's surgery. They are both retired and don't usually splurge, so a trip like this should be fun. I sat in the passenger seat, leafing through a Lake Tahoe travel magazine. Upon arriving, I planned to call my parents to the lobby after checking in, but they were already in the parking lot. And standing next to them was Sarah! Suddenly, my husband parked the car abruptly and rushed over to them. What on earth is happening? I was sure I had explained the plan properly. I quickly got out the passenger seat of the car and followed. What's going on here? While I was flustered, my husband began speaking fluently to my parents. You knew of a great hotel, didn't you? We plan to enjoy it with my parents from tomorrow. You've already paid for the stay, right? My parents were stunned. Of course they would be. This was completely unplanned. My mother-in-law, as brazen as ever, said, You sure know some good hotels. Take care of it for us, okay? And next time, let's go to Alaska. What are you saying? On the other hand, my father-in-law, seemingly as clueless about the situation as we were, asking my husband, Didn't you invite us on this trip? You said you'd cover the costs. Hearing that, I could feel the blood rush to my head. Wait a minute! This hotel was arranged by my parents. Why would you just invite yours? Now my mother-in-law chimed in. What's the big deal? You can't hog such a nice hotel for yourself. You should care more about your husband's parents. I wanted to treat my parents to a luxury trip because I rarely get to see them, unlike John and Sarah. Plus, today is my mom's birthday. My mother-in-law, with a really look, sized me up from head to toe. You've never gotten me a birthday present. Such blatant favoritism. What? I raised my voice in disbelief. You did send Sarah her favorite flowers recently, didn't you? That was from your son. Stop taking credit for other people's gestures. I look at my husband, who was avoiding my gaze. He never showed any interest in giving gifts. Since our marriage, I've been the one choosing and giving gifts. So you kept silent about the gift for Sarah? Looking into my husband's eyes, he said something unthinkable. Look, I'm using your money to buy them. It's the same as if I picked and bought them myself. He seemed genuinely annoyed. Generally, after marriage, my parents should be the priority. Send your parents home. What? That's right. From now on, it's quality time for our son and us. My mother-in-law interjected without missing a beat. I was deeply hurt. I never imagined he felt this way. Where did the kind man I married disappear to? Then, a robust man in a suit approached us quickly. Is there a problem? Before he could finish, my mother-in-law began speaking at lightning speed. We want these people gone. We'll use their remaining nights. I'm sorry, but we can't do that. Why not? She snapped. They have already paid, and we have them booked until the day after tomorrow. In her fury, she pointed at me. She is my son's wife. What belongs to my son's wife and her parents is practically ours. My husband just nodded. Seeing that scene, all my pent-up feelings felt like they exploded. The man apologized and said they couldn't do that, but she replied, First of all, you're letting such poor-looking people stay here. Won't it ruin the hotel's reputation? My husband started blaming me along. I decided to approach my husband's back and tell him the truth. You know, this place is my father's family home. What? My husband and mother-in-law stared at me with wide eyes. The man in the suit is my father's younger brother, which means he's my uncle. My uncle started speaking in a firm, yet humble tone. My brother and I have a big age difference. Back then, our parents were busy with their hotel business. He took care of me like a parent. Everything I have now is because of him. Hearing this, my father became emotional and whispered, You. When I heard you were staying here, I was truly happy, thinking I could finally repay his kindness. But you, thinking you could stay for free just because it's your son's wife's family. Oh! I could hear my mother-in-law's groaning. We have rooms available ranging from $450 to $1,800 per night. Please proceed to the front desk if you're interested. Stunned by the price, my husband and his mother were flustered. What do we do now? We don't know any other hotels. What do you expect me to say? Watching the two, my father-in-law let out a deep sigh. This is karma for always taking credit for Tiffany's achievements and trying to impress your mother with them. My husband seemed at a loss for words. I'm truly sorry, everyone. I never thought my son would do something like this. He began to apologize deeply. No, wait, John. I quickly intervened. My father-in-law is a victim too. He was invited to the hotel by his son, only to find out he'd been deceived. Though my mother-in-law seemed to have been told even more. Suddenly, she had an idea. Wait! Since it's a hotel run by relatives, can't you give us a discount? We are family after all. How shameless can she be? Has she forgotten all that she has done? But my uncle calmly stated, I don't consider someone who insults my loved ones as family. His words made me realize something. The way my husband and mother-in-law had been treating me all along was condescending. All the unpleasant tasks were left to me. Any praise was stolen by them. What was I to them? They exploited and belittled me. If they had thought about my family even a little, this trip wouldn't have happened. You've always looked down on me, haven't you? I said, looking at my husband, who hung his head in silence. You thought my parents would let this slide if you pushed hard enough. How awful. I couldn't afford to stay at such an expensive hotel. I just wanted to impress people. With a face full of regret, he glared at me. My father-in-law approached, looking disappointed. Isn't this just like you? Always trying to look good in front of your mother. Who is the person you should be protecting the most right now? Huh? My husband stood still, looking confused. With a stern face, my father-in-law continued. Listen. You're married. Your priority should be protecting your wife, not impressing your mother. And yet, you. My husband looked away. But I noticed the expression on his face. He will always choose his mother, no matter what anyone says. Summoning my courage, I raised my voice. John, thank you for all you've done for me so far. You've helped me more times than he ever did. But I can't continue living with him as a couple any longer. My husband looked up, surprised. Let's get a divorce. Saying the word divorce out loud made me feel incredibly liberated. Right. I've always wanted to divorce him. Are you serious? I heard my mother's voice from behind. I nodded. Yes. I've been thinking about it for a while now. Hold on. I'll apologize for what happened this time. Watching my husband scramble was almost like seeing a stranger's plight. It's not just about what happened this time. It's the forgotten gifts for Sarah, and countless other things. Of course, today played a part in my decision. Suddenly, my mother-in-law, red-faced with fury, yelled. A woman like you, who doesn't work or even have children, should be grateful just to be married. The realization that I could also sever ties with her left me with no fear. Look, I won't be belittled. And just for your information, it was your son who didn't want kids, saying parenting would be a hassle. I bet you never heard that from him. My mother-in-law just sat down, stunned. She had always believed it was my fault, not realizing it was her son's decision all along. So, my husband and mother-in-law were taken away by my father-in-law, and I went on to enjoy a family vacation with my own parents. You had quite the eventful birthday, didn't you? I'm sorry. My mom, with her usual cheerful tone. As long as you're happy, that's all that matters. But who knew he was that awful? I should have visited earlier to see how things were. No, it's okay. I've been in that life for so long, I became indifferent. This was a wake-up call. My typically silent father seemed to have a hint of joy on his face. After that, my husband and I divorced. But it seems the relationship between him and his mother has soured. He was never the considerate type and always left everything but his job to me. Without me, his apartment was reportedly turned into a garbage dump. Apparently, my ex-mother-in-law visits him regularly to clean up. However, she's nearing her breaking point, often fighting with the son she used to adore. Once, their argument got so heated the police were called. My ex-father-in-law claims she brought this upon herself by spoiling their son. Interestingly, on the day of the hotel incident, a neighborhood association president, whom my ex-mother-in-law was close with, was vacationing there too. He saw all her unreasonable antics. As a result, she's lost all respect in their community, labeled as the mother of the husband who bullied his wife into divorce. As for me, I found a job at my uncle's hotel. Searching for a job post-divorce, he offered me a position. Keeping the fact that I'm the owner's relative a secret, I'm now learning from more experienced staff members. The hotel job requires meticulous attention, and while there are tasks I haven't mastered yet and times I've been corrected, it's a far cry from the unappreciated housework I did before. Every effort here gets its due recognition. Can't be serious. What's going on here? Trembling, Robert met my steady gaze as I calmly stated, I don't know. But since you mentioned divorce, I'll proceed with it. Also, I'll discuss this with your parents. They'll surely understand the truth. My name is Nancy. I'm 28 years old. I work for a company that deals in household goods in the HR department. I met Robert at a drinking party through a friend. Robert runs a tech business with his parents. I decided to marry him because his carefree nature was a comfort to me, working in an organizational setting. Even after marriage, I got along well with Robert, but his family was a constant source of worry. His parents believed that a woman should join her husband's family after marriage, a view that clashed with my desire to continue working. Every time we met, they would make snide remarks. "Nancy, you're still working? It's shameful for a woman to be out and about. Quit your job and help out as Robert's wife." Jennifer, my mother-in-law, would often summon me to say these things. Dodging her was one thing, but spending my precious days off dealing with her was a significant stress. I enjoy my job, recently tasked with the selection of new hires. I look forward to building my career. The company culture is positive, and while work has its challenges, I don't face unpleasantness. It's not just about the income. I want to continue working. "Why don't you say something to Robert?" When Jennifer tried to involve him, Robert, albeit vaguely, respected my wishes. "If Nancy wants to work, then let her. Dad's still healthy, and it's not like I'm taking over immediately. Let her have her freedom at home." Hearing Robert's words, Jennifer narrowed her eyes in irritation and responded angrily. "You've become quite the outspoken son. Living together is obviously better. God knows what Nancy has told you." Robert sighed in annoyance and retorted, "Even if she helped, it's not like our sales would suddenly skyrocket. Having her work increases our income, which is more helpful." Hearing this, I couldn't deny feeling a bit disappointed, wishing for more affectionate words. However, I appreciated that he supported the lifestyle I wanted. I decided to overlook my feelings and be thankful to Robert. But as the months, half a year, and then a year went by, things couldn't stay the same. Jennifer relentlessly pressed for cohabitation and for me to quit my job. It seemed her fixation on this was strong, showing no signs of compromise. And, overwhelmed with dissatisfaction to the point of madness, she exclaimed, "It's absurd you're so obsessed with working outside. What are you after? Men? Yes, that must be it. While married to Robert, you're losing your head over men at work. How disgusting and shameful." Her baseless accusations and hysteria made calming her down a task, requiring coffee and sweets to manage her mood. Of course, Robert never believed Jennifer's delusions. However, he seemed to grow weary of her frequent outbursts and tantrums, and his support for me waned. "Look, if it calms Mom down, shouldn't we just compromise? Being raged at every time is stressful for you, Nancy. Eventually, I'll take over the business anyway, so quitting and moving in might be quicker than convincing her," Robert mumbled, looking down at the dining table. Finishing his thought, he cradled his head in his hands, sighing deeply. Robert was caught between Jennifer and me, and I could understand his pain. But it shocked me that he had let go of the support he used to give me. "Why? Why would you say that, Robert?" I stopped washing dishes, my voice trembling with tears. "What do you mean, why? You see how Mom acts. I'm tired of being attacked for continuing our life this way. And you must be too, right? After repeating the same for a year, do you still want to work?" Indeed, Jennifer's escalating insults and abuse had pushed me to my limit. But my job was an essential part of my life. I didn't want to give it up. Considering Jennifer's nature, cohabiting could just start a new series of harassments against me. "Yes, but... Robert, you're her son. Can't you talk some sense into her? You said it was beneficial for us if I worked, increasing our income. Don't give in to your mom. There's no guarantee that living together solves everything." Tears welled up in my eyes, but I clenched my fists, trying to hold back my emotions. I felt betrayed by Robert, mixed with sadness and anger. Then, irritated, Robert slammed the newspaper on the table, stood up abruptly, making a loud noise. Enough! That's old news. Sticking to the same view won't always work out. Nancy, you're stubborn and selfish. Wait! You can't just say what suits you and flip your stance when it's inconvenient. That's dishonest, I retorted strongly as Robert tried to leave. Our day ended with such an argument, leaving me exhausted. I was so drained, I barely managed to clean up before I just went to bed for the day. Why did things end up like this? Jennifer was a problem, but what really hurt was how Robert's attitude had changed. If Robert drifted away, I'd be isolated without any help. Feeling utterly alone, with no one on my side, made me feel incredibly vulnerable. After that fight, things were awkward between us, but a few weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. After feeling unwell for some days and being urged by coworkers to see a doctor, I discovered I was 2 months pregnant. Robert was happy about the news. He also became more considerate of my condition during the pregnancy. If it's a boy, could he be my successor? If it's a girl, I hope she's as cute as Nancy. You're handling both work and house chores now, but it's an important time, and you shouldn't overdo it. I was touched by his kind words. But then, as if on cue, Robert casually brought up the last thing I wanted to hear. How about taking this chance to quit your job? Working while pregnant must be hard on you, and it's a good opportunity. If we live with my parents, my mom can take care of the house, so you can rest. At that moment, my emotions surged. Had he forgotten all the discussions and fights we've had so far, just like that? To say such a thing so easily, with a smile, no less. Don't talk nonsense. This isn't a good opportunity. It's as if you're using this baby we were so happy about as an excuse to make me submit to your family's demands. That's not why we decided to have a child, is it? I'm not quitting my job. As I fired back, Robert looked taken aback, as if he was under pressure. Calm down. Why are you so angry? Quitting a job because of pregnancy is quite common. It might be common, but my company has maternity and parental leave policies in place. I plan to take maternity leave, then return to work once things settle down. Plus, if I quit now, I'll lose all the income during the leave. Robert seemed to drift off halfway through my explanation but snapped to attention towards the end. Seemingly hooked by the mention of money. Oh, so maybe quitting after the parental leave ends could work. Let's just take the leave for now and figure out the rest later. With a vague, non-committal tone, Robert said this and looked away from me, continuing to watch TV as if nothing had happened. Seeing his profile as he pretended nothing was amiss, I sighed without realizing it. I hadn't noticed before we were married, but I never thought he'd be such a fair-weather, agreeable man. From now on, I need to be firmer. A few months later, I returned to my parents' home to give birth, wanting to be near my family during this time. I wanted nothing to do with my in-laws or Jennifer around the birth. When I told my parents about Jennifer and Robert, they were very worried about me and even angrier at Robert than I was. People who change their minds like that can't be trusted. You should not stay with him. If this continues, it might be worth considering a divorce. My mom said, her voice low and firm as she wielded the kitchen knife with more force than usual. Even I, who had directly confronted Robert, felt intimidated by her intensity. Thank you. But Robert isn't a bad person as long as Jennifer and his family aren't involved. Once the baby is born, our life will change, and I want to see how things go for a while. When I said that, Mom sighed worriedly. Nancy, it's good that you're patient, but you tend to keep too much to yourself. If it becomes too much, promise me you'll tell us right away, okay? Yeah, I understand. Feeling Mom's strong love, a few months later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. We named her Sarah. I continued to live at my parents' house, not wanting to return to a place close to my in-laws, and eventually, after a year, I found a childcare center and planned to return to work. Though Robert did visit to see Sarah from time to time, we never discussed living together or quitting my job again. Actually, both of us seemed to avoid the topic. Mom didn't show her anger in front of me, but quietly pressured Robert. Now that the family is growing with the birth of our child, please make sure to support Nancy and Sarah properly. Thank you. Back in the house with Robert, nothing had changed with him or Jennifer. Jennifer would barge into our house to see her granddaughter, criticizing. How shameful! A woman who has a child and still insists on working instead of living with her husband's family has no shame. And Robert, in his way, would dismiss everything with, "Let's just see how things go. Parenting comes with its challenges." 2 years flew by. Sarah grew rapidly, now walking freely and starting to talk. I continued to work part-time while Sarah was in childcare, without moving in with my in-laws. Robert had become so accustomed to Jennifer's tirades and my persuasions that he would ignore our arguments, focusing on the TV. I had no expectations from Robert anymore. I hoped that someday, I could convince them on my own terms. One day, Sarah became ill. She was covered in red rashes that seemed to cause her pain or itchiness, making her cry in discomfort. Realizing the severity, I immediately took time off work and rushed Sarah to the hospital. The doctor suggested a blood test as a precaution. And when I mentioned we hadn't determined her blood type yet, they included it in the tests. I thought it was unnecessary, but agreed since the doctor recommended it. The diagnosis revealed that the rashes were due to atopic dermatitis, and she was prescribed specific medication for it. It was a relief to understand the inflammation and how to treat it. But the real issue arose from the blood test results. I am O-type, and so is Robert. Logically, our child should also be O-type. My reluctance for the blood type test was because it seemed obvious and unnecessary. Yet, the result puzzled me. Feeling an inexplicable chill, I returned home. And seriously brought up the issue with Robert, discussing Sarah's atopy before showing him the blood type results. Isn't it strange that both of us are O-type, but Sarah is a type? As I hesitantly asked, Robert's complexion changed rapidly, and he shouted in anger. "This means divorce! Nancy, you must have been cheating at work!" Shocked by his terrifying aggression, I trembled. "Wait, this is just a report. It could be a mistake in the test results." "No way! You've been having children with another man. Mom said you were obsessed with work because you had a man on the side, and she was right. Pretending to be a career woman, freely mingling with men. What a philanderer!" Robert hurled insults at me with a face red with rage. Amidst the loud and violent shouting, I felt a profound disgust and instinctively closed my eyes. It was heartbreaking to be so misunderstood, and the vile language he used was shocking. "Stop it! Don't talk like that. I would never cheat. You know I've been commuting between work and home every day, don't you? Don't you trust your own wife? Trust? There's no trust here. The test results say it all!" Robert screamed, violently slapping the paper with the test results. It seemed we could no longer communicate. I had completely misjudged my choice of partner. I deeply felt the mistake in my choice. I won't raise someone else's child. I don't even want to see the face of a child born to such a despicable woman. Get out of this house immediately, both of you. And since you cheated, expect a claim for compensation in the divorce court." Robert's yelling filled the house, waking Sarah in the next room, who started crying. The rash hadn't even settled down yet. Imagine how uncomfortable she must feel. While I was heartbroken thinking about Sarah, Robert forcefully pushed our belongings at us, trying to throw us out on the spot. In a panic, I grabbed our essentials and the medication prescribed by the hospital. Then, at the doorstep, I made one last plea to Robert. "Please listen. It's too baffling not to investigate. If it bothers you so much, let's do a DNA test." Hearing this, Robert looked down on me with disdain, jetting out his chin. "Fine, do it. It'll just prove your infidelity. Go ahead and hang yourself with your actions." Once convinced, Robert, showing no willingness to bend, happily offered his hair for the test. Suddenly expelled from the house, we headed to my parents' home, a 2-hour bus ride away. By the time we arrived, I was exhausted. My mom was shocked to see us and furious after hearing the story. "It's just too much. Kicking you out on such one-sided assumptions is crazy. Sure, the blood test results are strange, but we should be working together as a couple to figure this out. You should send such a husband back to his parents," Mom said firmly. She then tenderly applied medication to Sarah, who was still suffering from the rash, comforting her. "It hurts, doesn't it? And it was scary. Sarah, you haven't done anything wrong." I apologized to my workplace and took a leave, relying on my parents' support to care for Sarah. Simultaneously, I sent Robert's hair for DNA testing, awaiting the outcome. Since I hadn't cheated, the blood type discrepancy was baffling. Although I didn't want to think about it, even if Robert had cheated, the child wouldn't have been born to the other woman, so this situation wouldn't make sense. After just over 2 weeks, the DNA test results came in. Together with Mom, I slowly opened the envelope. Inside, the information was surprising. Indeed, Sarah was without a doubt our child. And it also confirmed that I am O-type. However, it turned out Robert's blood type was actually A. I went back to the house we had been expelled from to share this fact. Anticipating conflict, I left Sarah with Mom. "What are you doing here? You're the worst." Robert greeted me coldly, but I calmly showed him the test results. His eyes widened slowly as he looked at the paper, and his angry brows fell into a mix of confusion and worry. "It can't be. How is this possible?" Robert had always said he was O-type. Of course, he wouldn't lie about something like that, and he had always believed it to be true. I looked straight at Robert, who was shaking, and said calmly, "Let's talk about this with your parents. The truth will surely come out." Surprisingly, Robert nodded. He had mentioned before that both his parents were also O-type, which might not be the truth. The tension and fear of uncovering secrets about his birth made Robert shrink. He was a completely different person from when he had hurled insults at me. When we went to his parents' house, it seemed Robert had already discussed Sarah's blood type and my alleged infidelity, and Jennifer's gaze was icy cold towards me. "Why are you with that promiscuous woman?" Jennifer expressed her disgust. To her, Robert showed the DNA test results with trembling hands. "We shouldn't be talking about this. Look at this. You and Dad said my blood type was O, didn't you? Why does it say A here?" Jennifer slowly took it, scrutinizing the paper with a strained expression. Then, she led us to a back room and seated us on a couch. Sitting opposite us, Jennifer was silent, her demeanor formal. It seemed she had something to say, but she hesitated, biting her lip and looking down. "Mom, why are you silent? Is there a reason? You're O-type, Dad's O-type, so I should be O-type too, right?" Robert, trying to appear strong, was clearly anxious, his hands trembling under the table. "Yes, but..." Jennifer's face lost all its color, turning ashen like a doll's. She winced painfully, her lips quivering in a purple hue. "Why won't you tell me? Please, the truth." Despite noticing Jennifer's distress, Robert persisted in his questioning. After a few seconds of silence, Jennifer sighed quietly and began to speak. "There's something I've kept silent about. Robert, you're not actually the child of your dad and me." I gasped at Jennifer's words. "What? No way! What does that mean?" Of course, Robert was greatly shocked by the sudden confession. "Before I married your dad, I had a careless affair with another man. Robert, you are the child from that time." Robert is now 30 years old. The realization that the family he grew up with is falling apart must be a tremendous shock. Robert was already shaking. "Does Dad know about this?" When Robert asked, Jennifer looked pained. That expression alone was answer enough. "So, you've been hiding this from me and Dad?" At that point, Robert was so dismayed he seemed almost unable to speak, just staring at Jennifer with a look that was close to tears. Jennifer shed a single tear. "Robert, I truly did care for you as my own, and raised you with all the love a parent could give." Jennifer had an affair shortly after her marriage and conceived a child from that liaison, pretending the child was her husband's and living a lie as a family. She continued to love her son, nonetheless. "But even hearing that, I can't just accept it. So, was your affair partner a type? Why hide such a crucial thing?" Robert, with tears welling up in his eyes, stood up to confront Jennifer. "Probably," Jennifer murmured and then fell silent, looking down. What a revelation. Jennifer's long-kept secret came to light because of Sarah's blood type. Was it fate's cruel play, or a divine punishment? At least Sarah was undoubtedly mine and Robert's child, so there was no role for me in this. I decided to watch quietly, holding my breath. Can such things even happen? I never verified my blood type with a test. I've been healthy since I was a kid and never needed to. I just believed what Mom said about being O-type. I really am sorry." At that moment, Jennifer humbly responded. Quietly, the door to the room opened. "I've heard everything." Standing there was father-in-law Daniel, looking beyond angry, his gaze chillingly cold. Daniel, too, had always been somewhat sarcastic towards me, overshadowed by Jennifer's more overt hostility. His face, usually concerned about his business's future, now betrayed his disappointment in Jennifer for her decades-long deceit. "Is it true that Robert is not our child?" Daniel asked Jennifer in a low voice. Daniel. You were listening?" Caught off guard by the revelation that her secret conversation was overheard, Jennifer began to panic. While Jennifer scrambled for excuses, Daniel found the test results and scrutinized them. "To have such an indecent relationship with another man. And you've been deceiving me with it until this age." Daniel's calm facade shattered instantly. He turned red with anger, furiously berating Jennifer. "Don't say it like that. That's so unfair. Robert is our precious son. Haven't we raised him with care all these years?" "Yes, that's right. Deceived by you, I've cared for another man's child as my own for 30 years. With a loud bang, Daniel slammed the test results on the table. At his outburst, both Robert and I flinched. Unable to withstand Daniel's fury, Jennifer stood up to argue back. "What's the use of getting angry now? I haven't been in touch with that man anymore, and it's been 30 years. It should be statute barred by now, shouldn't it? No statute on this. I never imagined you to be such a promiscuous woman. And the evidence is still standing right here," Daniel yelled, pointing at Robert. Caught in the crossfire of his parents' argument, Robert was too stunned to respond. Given this revelation, I can no longer stay married to Jennifer. We're getting a divorce. And you, Robert. If you're not my son, then don't ever come back to our home again. Wait, what? That can't be true. Amidst the escalating argument between the in-laws, Robert found himself thrown out of the house. Seemingly irrelevant to their dispute, I also left with him, and we ended up discussing our divorce over a meal at a nearby family restaurant. Look, I get it now. You didn't cheat. It was all a misunderstanding. Sarah is definitely our child, so let's cancel the divorce. We can go back to living in that house, right? True to his opportunistic nature, my husband now comes with a convenient proposal. It's surprising, really. Feeling disillusioned, I responded indifferently. No way. While the misunderstanding has been cleared, the words you said can't be taken back. The way you spoke to me was unforgivable, not to mention calling Sarah the worst things. I can't stay married to someone who can speak so lightly of us. The divorce will proceed. Wait, don't talk like that. As Robert tried to stop me, I gave him a cold smile. Maybe it's for the best, Robert. You wanted a wife who doesn't insist on working or disagreeing with the house, didn't you? You used to stand up for me, but gradually, you just followed Jennifer's lead. I don't need a husband who won't support me. Let's settle the rest through lawyers. Goodbye. I stood up quickly, leaving a bewildered Robert behind in the bustling family restaurant. As I boarded the bus again to fetch Sarah from my parents' house, Robert returned to his parental home only to find that, just as Daniel had said, he was not allowed inside, and of course, he was also fired from the family business. As expected, I received a message stating that the succession plans were now void. I ignored the message and immediately started looking for a law firm to proceed with the claim for compensation in the divorce proceedings. Robert's actions qualified as emotional harassment, enabling me to claim $20,000 in divorce compensation. I received complaints from Robert, stating he was jobless and couldn't pay, but I maintained a firm stance that the amount could not be reduced. Robert had not saved any money, assuming he would inherit the family business and become its president. I knew all too well that he had squandered any extra earnings on alcohol and gambling. Moreover, maintaining the apartment we had lived in would likely be impossible. On the other hand, after being kicked out of her home at 60 due to her affair, Jennifer managed to contact Brian, her past lover, seemingly intending to flee to him. Robert got in touch with Jennifer, and they decided to meet and head to Brian's home together, who was believed to be Robert's biological father. Brian was shocked and greatly bewildered when a woman from his past and an unexpected son suddenly appeared after 30 years. He tried to deny the past, claiming he couldn't remember such a thing and suggesting they might be mistaken. Jennifer insisted on a DNA test, offering to cover the costs. Furthermore, their argument at the doorstep was discovered by Brian's wife, who lives in the same house, leading to the three being interrogated about what was happening. Shockingly, at that time 30 years ago, Brian was already married, and his affair was exposed to his wife, leading to a divorce being thrust upon him in front of Jennifer and Robert. After my fight with Robert came Jennifer and Daniel's argument. And finally, the conflict between Brian and his wife ensued. One dramatic scene led to another, creating a commotion everywhere. During all this, I rented a new room close to my parents' house and started living there with Sarah. I never wanted to return to the apartment I shared with Robert, nor did I want to indefinitely rely on my parents. Afterwards, Mom said, "Robert was odd, and so was his family. Divorcing was the right decision. Let's take good care of Sarah together." She encouraged me warmly. Her occasional help has been invaluable. I apologized to my company for the leave, briefly explained the situation, and requested a transfer to a branch that was commutable from my new home. My previous performance was appreciated, and though the company regretted my departure, my transfer was approved, and I was able to return to work successfully. As I was starting this new life, Mom arrived at my house looking upset. "Can I talk to you?" It seemed she wasn't angry with me, so I let her in to listen. "Can you believe Robert came to our house? Unbelievable." Mom said this as she sipped the tea I had made, her eyebrows raised in disbelief. I felt a sense of disgust at Robert's pathetic behavior and sorry for the inconvenience caused to my parents. "He said he couldn't pay child support because he was jobless and asked for help, relying on Nancy. When I told him you had started a new life, he begged us for money with a terrible look on his face. It was so bad, we had to kick him out right away." Mom recounted, finishing her tea feeling relieved. "I'm sorry for causing trouble, Mom." When I apologized, Mom gave me a generous smile. "It's okay, it's all in the past. I've already warned him I'll call the police if he shows up again, so he won't bother us anymore. Nancy, you need to move on and focus on yourself and Sarah." Mom said this and patted my shoulder. Encouraged by Mom's warmth, I couldn't help but tear up. By the way, Mom is definitely type O. After that, I received messages and voicemails from Robert almost daily. It seems that Robert, Jennifer, and Brian, all ousted from their respective homes, ended up living together out of convenience. Seeing their messages, I couldn't help but laugh at the bizarre combination. However, it's impossible for such a tumultuous group to live together harmoniously. As expected, it seems none of them are getting along well. They turned to me for help, but Mom sent them packing, audaciously asking for assistance. I ignored everything, blocking Robert's account and phone number. Robert's persistence didn't end there. He even showed up at my new workplace. But he never got to confront me. Having shared my fears about being stalked, the company was prepared. As soon as the surveillance cameras caught Robert, alarms sounded throughout the building. Startled by the alarm and the approaching security guards, Robert fled, a scene I watched from the safety of an internal monitor. My colleagues, having witnessed Robert's obsession, sympathized with me and promised to keep him away. Shortly after, an unexpected visitor arrived at my company. Jennifer, supposedly unrelated to me now. Unfortunately, she caught me in the hallway during my lunch break. "I finally found you. Nancy, you need to take responsibility for once." Jennifer's angry voice echoed in the office hallway. Passing employees looked on worriedly as Jennifer, visibly more haggard and pale, began ranting at me. "What? Why are you here at my office all of a sudden?" I asked, bewildered. As I was bewildered, Jennifer, who had become significantly more haggard and pale-faced than before, yelled in a shrill voice. "It's obvious, isn't it? If you hadn't investigated the blood type. If there hadn't been a DNA test, none of this would have happened. Your meddling has ruined everything I've built up. Everything is a mess now." Despite being responsible for her affair and keeping silent about the child she bore from it for over 30 years, Jennifer tried to forcibly shift the blame onto me. Just as Jennifer attempted to grab me, security personnel who had rushed over restrained her. Immediately after, the situation escalated to the point where the police were called. For some reason, Robert was there too, apparently watching from a hiding spot, and it seems they both ended up being interrogated by the police. I wish they would just stop. My new life has begun, and I've completely severed ties with Robert through divorce. Begging for a peaceful life, I went home, only to face a similar situation at work the next day. Just like the day before, someone had infiltrated the office and was waiting in the hallway. This time, it was Daniel who had come. I had never shared my workplace details with him, leaving me puzzled and slightly terrified about how he found me. As our eyes met, Daniel, with a frivolous smile, said, "Well, I know we've caused a lot of trouble in the past. Now that Jennifer and I are separated and Robert's been kicked out, we're actually short-staffed. Considering you were Robert's wife, why not help out at the company as an employee?" "Don't be absurd. I was the wife of Robert, whom you disowned. I have nothing to do with you now. If you're headhunting, please look elsewhere," I responded calmly. At that, Daniel's demeanor shifted from smug to menacing as he aggressively confronted me. "What? You're talking back to me? When you were married to Robert, it was all about not quitting your job and not living together, just doing whatever you wanted. Now, when I'm offering to start over and hire you, you're saying no? The nerve of women these days, all so insolent, it's infuriating." Daniel's rant continued unabashedly until security and the police arrived, much like when Jennifer had appeared, and took him away. With the departure of all three related parties from my workplace, the harrowing days of their uninvited visits came to an end, leaving me relieved and surrounded by concerned colleagues. Finally, peace of mind seems achievable as I dedicate myself more fully to my work. In the aftermath for Robert's family, it appears Daniel employed the reasoning he shared with me, despite the divorce, considering me still the ex-wife of his son, to propose a solution for their dire need of manpower in his business. Robert and Jennifer, facing dilemmas of shelter and financial insecurity, hesitantly accepted the offer of work and a place to stay. However, a family once fragmented by deceit and betrayal couldn't possibly reconcile to function harmoniously. Indeed, neither their domestic nor professional endeavors flourished, leading to daily disputes that resonated throughout the neighborhood, making them pariahs in their community. Nonetheless, they have consistently fulfilled the obligation of the divorce settlement payments. Payments are being monitored through a lawyer, ensuring that any interruption prompts immediate reminders for continuation. Given their current predicament, making divorce settlement payments likely compromises their living standards, leading to reluctant borrowing to make ends meet. Consequently, repaying this debt further exacerbates their financial distress. Caught in a vicious cycle, Robert appears to be exploited for cheap labor at Daniel's company. On my end, life has taken a positive turn. Bringing valuable expertise from my tenure at the headquarters, I've become an asset in my new role. Praised for efficiency and accuracy, I've quickly earned trust and respect from colleagues. Talks of salary increments and promotions are already on the horizon, signaling expectations for my continued excellence. The people here are kind and upbeat, making this a workplace where I wish to stay indefinitely. Child-rearing is progressing smoothly. During the day, Sarah attends a childcare center, and sometimes with Mom's assistance, she has grown significantly. Regular hospital visits have gradually improved her atopic dermatitis, bringing some peace of mind. Her earnest stories about her day at the childcare center are irresistibly adorable. Her third birthday is approaching, and Mom and I are discussing how to celebrate it. Though she might not remember it, we want to give her a beautiful, delightful celebration. Mom has recently been busy knitting sweaters for Sarah, pouring her love into every stitch. "I'm going to knit the cutest sweater in the world, so get excited," she declared with enthusiasm in front of me. As for me, I've taken up baking, whipping up daily snacks while also preparing to make Sarah's birthday cake from scratch. Strawberry cake is nice, but how about an apple pie? "What do you think, Sarah?" I asked. Our little girl, after a moment's thought, tilted her head and brightly exclaimed, "Apple pie." Her adorable response brought a spontaneous smile to my face. Life might throw challenges at us as we go along. But whether it's work, parenting, or just dealing with everyday life, I believe in facing everything with a smile, taking one step at a time, and trusting the people around me. As long as Sarah is by our side, I'm confident we can handle anything.